Like, if you're gonna ruin a space in the school, why don't you ruin I probably shouldn't encourage you to ruin any. Don't ruin any, just as an established fact. Don't ruin any.
How to survive the classroom.
Hey, teacher besties, welcome to How to Survive the Classroom. I had the wildest weekend and it was so unexpected. So, our initial plan for this weekend was that we were going to just do a soccer game on Saturday morning and then we were going to go back to the house and chill because we had forgotten that we had friends that were going to be in town in Indianapolis because my husband went to Yale with a few people and a lot of them decided to do this bridge program that Butler University has, right? So you graduate with your PA degree and then for like another year of classes or whatever, you get a doctor of medical science, I think. So they're not an MD, but they have their doctorate, if you know what I'm like. So not an MD, but a PA with a doctorate, if that makes sense. And so she graduated from this program on Saturday morning. And so we were like, oh, okay, well, like maybe we'll just go down to the Children's Museum in Indianapolis, which if you have never been to any of the children's museums, cannot recommend highly enough. If you have kids under the age of like 13, these museums are incredible. Everything is made to be like touched and played with and explored. And it's so much fun. We have season passes. And so we go pretty much anytime we have a friend that comes into town. And our friend also has a 13-year-old and she has a 7-year-old. And so we went and it was so much fun. So now my kids have done soccer in the morning and then we went to the Children's Museum. Either one of those would have just absolutely exhausted my kids, but we did both in one day. And then we went to dinner. And as we're sitting at dinner, my friend's daughter, who is 13, was like, if you guys wanted to go out after this, you could go out and I could watch the kids at the hotel. And I'm like, you know what? It would be kind of fun. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, if we're going out though, then we should get a hotel here. So we just spontaneously ended up getting a hotel on Saturday night. And like, that's like a 20-something-year-old activity to do. Like, but my kids now, like, they don't need diapers. They don't need all of that stuff. And we only live an hour and a half away. So I'm like, okay, we could be spontaneous. We can do this. So we get the hotel that night. I get everything situated, make sure like the fold-out bed is ready for when we get back that night and all of that. And I get down to the lobby and my friend's husband looks at me and he's like, are you ready? And I was like, yeah, did you guys already call the Uber? And he's like, oh, we're not Ubering. And I was like, what do you mean we're not Ubering? What are we going to walk? How close is this place? Because Indianapolis, like, it's not a huge city, but not everything is like super walkable, right? And I've also not spent an abundant amount of time in downtown Indianapolis. And they found this hotel that was right next to the canal, which apparently exists in Indianapolis. Like there were gondolas, you guys. There's gondolas in Indianapolis, which I had no idea. And so I get down there and he's like, yeah, we're not going to Uber. I'm like, okay, are we going to gondola? And he's like, no, we're going to scooter. And I'm like, what scooter do you mean? Because I have been around Indianapolis and other big cities where I see people on these electric scooters. And every single time I see it, I don't mock them, but it's not respect that I'm feeling when I see people happily scootering along. And so I'm like, we're not scootering. And he's like, oh, we are scootering. And we go outside and there are 4 electric Lime scooters. I think Lime is the brand, like set up for us that he has selected. And you basically just scan it with your app and then you scooter. And it was unabashedly some of the most fun I've had in I don't know how long. Like, it turns out if you're having enough fun, your dignity doesn't even matter anymore. You just scooter. And we were scootering through downtown Indianapolis. We were 5 miles away from the location that we were headed to because there's this other place in Indianapolis called The Garage, which I had never been to. And it is like a modern version of a mall food court where it's like this big warehouse style thing, but there was like 15 different tiny restaurants in there. And so you walk in there and they have all of this different ethnic food. And in Indiana, it is very difficult to find ethnic food. So I was very excited about this. And so we get there and there's all of this amazing food and there's a bar and like it just had like such good energy. And I'm like, how did I not know this was in Indianapolis? And so we hung out there for a bit and then we ended up scootering to the next location. And as we were scootering, from the garage to a speakeasy in one of the hotels there. We end up in an area of Indianapolis that's not great. So we're pulling up, all four of us, me and my husband, who, by the way, I am near 40. My husband is 40. This other couple, same situation, right? So people in their late 30s, early 40s, scootering about in the middle of the night in Indianapolis. And we pull up, and there was this spot where like the sidewalk ended and there was construction, and then there was one lane for the roads. And so I'm like, okay, we're probably going to be fine, right? And then we look over and there's like nowhere for us to go. And we look to the left and there's this like grassy knoll, if you will. And there's like 40 dudes, all dressed similarly, standing there completely silently at night. Like, I'm not saying they were in a gang, but the energy of we're going to do crimes was there, you know? And so all of us scooterers scoot up there and we like, right? And we're standing there trying to figure out where to go. And I look to the left and all these dudes are just standing there staring at us, not speaking to each other, not scootering on their own scoots, like just staring at us. And I was like, I feel like we are giving victim right now. Like, we need to get going. And so we found a different way. We like scootered across the street and got out of there. But it was so funny because I'm like, how embarrassing would that be to see in like the news that like, oh, educator Andrea, while scootering past like known gang territory, got herself robbed. Like, it was an experience. So if you have ever thought you're too cool to scooter, I highly encourage you to find a friend that will peer pressure you into scootering because it is so much fun. And they go faster than you would think. They go like 15 miles an hour, I think is like the top speed. And so I mean, faster than most people can run. So I guess maybe if those people were doing crimes and tried to catch us, we might be able to scooter away, maybe. But it was incredibly fun. Highly recommend. It turns out I am not too cool to scooter, which should probably shock nobody. But I will say, be careful because you do need to follow like traffic laws and stuff. Because our locally in Terre Haute, there were some girls that got very, very hurt because they didn't follow a stop sign, and then like an ambulance ended up hitting them. It's crazy. So follow traffic laws, but also if you want a scooter, get out there and do some scootering. Um, and as I am wrapping up the semester for myself and for my students, I've been trying to get really good gifts for my kids' teachers. So I brought them coffee and donuts this morning, but last week was actually Teacher Appreciation Week here. And so I did get some gifts, and I want to know what you guys got from your students. And if you're a parent yourself, like what did you get for the teachers that are working with your own kids? Because I am always so nervous about getting gifts for these teachers because I don't want to offend, but also I know who my children are. And so I sent a little message and was like, hey, girl, do you drink wine? Because if you drink wine, I will bring you wine. And one of the teachers does not drink and the other one does. And so I basically put together like a self-care bag. So I got a book for each of them. I got them each a Yankee candle because I'm so basic. I love a Yankee candle. You know, it just makes me happy. And then I got each of them a little bit of chocolate, and I got them, some face masks, some like good face masks. So I got them like a little like self-care thing, and then a gift card for the one who doesn't drink, and then a bottle of wine for the one that does. And so I put together that like little kit because that's something that I think I would really love. But I'm always looking for ideas, and people are always asking me online and stuff like, what should I get my kid's teacher for Teacher Appreciation Week? And that is what I like to give, is that. Or during Christmas, I will call the teachers and I'll send them a menu and I'll be like, okay, on Thursday, I'm bringing lunch. Pick what you want and I'll bring them lunch. Which honestly is a little bit easier and cheaper than trying to figure out like a specific gift. If you've got like a high school student that has like 7 teachers, it's a lot easier to buy lunch for 7 teachers than it is to like come up with 7 different gifts. And it gets more expensive, I feel like, to buy 7 different gifts than just to buy lunch for everybody. So just as an idea, if you're trying to figure out something good to get for your kids' teachers. All right. So now I am so excited to hear what has been sent in to me. So let's jump in to the first submission from a fan today.
So it's funny you should ask. I teach middle school, and this just happened today. one of our students, female student, was dress coded, and she got a replacement shirt from our OCR person, and we're like, "Okay, go change." She's like, "No, I'm not going in." We're like, "Just go in the bathroom and change." And she's like, "I'm not going in there. There's poop in there." We're like, "Yeah, it's a bathroom. That's where poop happens." And she's like, "No, there's poop on the floor." I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Go look." So I went in there and looked, and sure enough, in the 7th and 8th grade girls' bathroom in the um, handicap stall was a toilet full of feces and other female biological things that are gross. And then on the floor next to the toilet was a turd, just a little brown stick there. Like, I mean, and it wasn't little. Yeah, it was a full turd on the bathroom floor. I don't know how this happens, especially in middle school. Um, so that, and there have been other things that I have dealt with in my almost decade of teaching, but that I really think is the craziest thing. And thank God it was not on my classroom floor.
Ugh, that is so incredibly foul. I I unfortunately I get a lot of DMs from people talking about either like kids pooping on the floor like that, like just literally laying a turd right on the floor, or doing poop art on the walls. Usually, those I feel like are associated with like younger grades. And I've also received a lot of messages from people being like, well, when it is like a younger kid that is doing that, sometimes it's associated with like abuse or trauma or something like that. Um, but when it's middle school, especially, and the cognitive level is generally a little bit higher, not a lot, but a little bit higher. I feel like it's a little rarer to see that, but I've heard from other people that, like, someone will do, like, an upper decker. Do you guys remember that? Like, where the kid will, like, remove the top, like, cover for the water tank on the toilet, and they'll poop up there, and then everything is poop water from then on out. Um, I feel like that is such a self-defeating thing. Like, if you're going to do some sort of chicanery, doing it in the bathroom is such a bad choice because everyone then can't go to the bathroom, including you. Like, if you're gonna ruin a space in the school, why don't you ruin I probably shouldn't encourage you to ruin any. Don't ruin any, just as an established fact. Don't ruin any. But if you're gonna ruin some, don't make it the bathroom because everyone has to use the bathroom, including you. So you're destroying an area that we all need. Ugh, and then it always happens that when that happens, they have to shut down the bathroom, sometimes for a long time. Then they're doing a whole investigation because a lot of these schools do have cameras on the outside of the bathroom. And so they'll figure out, okay, like these 17 students went to the bathroom, and you bring them all in and be like, was there poop on the floor? Was there poop on the floor? Until you figure out who says, not until after I was there. You know, like none of them are actually going to admit it because you can't really prove it. But uh, I never understand that mentality. But it does also remind me of this thing that I discovered. I don't know how many years ago it was. I feel like it was after my husband and I had started dating. And I don't know why this came up. But there are two types of people when it comes to how they wipe after they poop, and there's the standers and the sitters, and usually neither knows about the other group. And so, like, if you're a person who after you poop, you stay seated when you wipe, then, like, that is just how you've always done it. But there's the other group of people that stand up when they wipe their butts after they poop. Um, and I always thought this was a learned behavior, okay? Because I'm a sitter, I don't stand. I think that's insane to stand. And I married a stander. My dad is a stander. Sorry, dad. I don't know if you're okay with me sharing that, but there it is. But my mom's not. And so I thought it was okay. Well, maybe it's a guy girl thing. Nope. Nope. I think it's genetic because, like, I've taught my kids to stay seated, and I will say one is a stander, and that's insane. That is insane behavior. And a lot of times, those are just one of those things, like, you don't even realize the other half exists, and when you find it out, it, like, breaks your brain. But yeah, there you go. So ask the people that you love in your life if they're standers or sitters. It might kind of, change the way you look at them because it did for me, I'm not gonna lie. So, you're welcome. If there's one thing you learned from today's podcast, it's that some people stand. It's so weird. Bunch of freaks. All right. Not to shame you, but be shamed. All right. Let's listen to the next story that was sent in.
My first year as an art teacher, in eighth grade class, there was two boys that were standing in the back of the classroom, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw that they had a stapler. And one friend, before I could intervene, was open the stapler and pretended to staple his friend in the leg. Next thing I knew, this friend comes up to me, and it had actually been done. He had a staple flush with his skin in the leg. I didn't know what to do. I reported it to the principal, saying that his friend stapled him in the leg, and they came up to me 2 periods later and admitted that he had stapled himself in the leg. His friend had held it up to his leg, and he had pushed it in. Happy first year teaching.
I don't know very many teachers who have worked with, like, a high school or middle school who have not seen a kid staple themselves because there is just something magnetic about opening up the stapler and going like that with it. And I have had so many students who have stapled themselves. And sometimes it starts out like what she's describing, right? Where it's like, aha, wouldn't it be funny if I just stapled my hand? And they'll like hit it on their hand, but just under where the actual staple comes out. And so they'll be doing that thinking it's so funny. And then maybe they'll try it a couple times, like they're like, I bet I could do it a couple times where the staple comes out. And then it never fails that their friend is like, ha, and like smacks it down. It sounds like that was consensual stapling, what happened with you. But I have had that happen multiple times before with my students where I will have a kid that staples their hand. I had one kid who did it. He didn't even open the stapler, which seems like a wilder, even though either way you're stapling yourself. But he put his hand in between, where the stapler goes and just kind of like lightly tapping it and then suddenly decided to like slam it down. It is such a beautiful illustration of a lack of a prefrontal cortex, where you're just like, what are you doing? Because then they're bleeding and they're like, do you have a Band-Aid? And I'm like, stop bleeding in my classroom, you animals. There were many times, and there were times where I'm like, you can wait, you can sit there and you can bleed until I am done with this part of the lesson. Because of course it always happens when you're trying to explain a project and you know that if you let them get up and bleed their way through the classroom, it's going to be a huge disruption. And it's like, can you bleed quietly in the corner until I am ready for you to get a Band-Aid? Because even as a high school teacher, I always had Band-Aids in my classroom. Always. And by the end of the year, they were always gone because of stupid stuff like that. Kids would do that, or they would like do other weird things to cause themselves bodily harm. Like, do you guys remember Knuckles when we were in high school? Like, I don't know if kids are still doing Knuckles or not. I feel like I've seen some of them, but it's a little bit rarer. What I have seen recently and heard recently a ton about is that kids are now sticking paper clips and other metal pieces into the charging ports of their laptops. And this has become so common that schools are having to shut down because when they do that, it creates smoke and potentially a fire. And then schools have to shut down because the smoke that it creates is potentially toxic. And so I had on my What Are Those Kids Doing on Fridays and stuff, I had at least a dozen teachers from all over the country telling me that their school or their class had to be evacuated because kids are sticking metal into the charging ports of their Chromebooks. And it's partially, they're saying it's a TikTok trend, right? I don't know that it's a TikTok trend. I feel like people talking about it is more of a TikTok trend. I feel like that happens all the time where they're like, There's this new TikTok trend where kids are doing crimes, just doing the crimes, and it's a TikTok trend. And I'm like, is it though, or is it kids just hearing about other kids doing it? I guess that maybe is what makes it the trend. But it's not like these trends are like kids going out there and being like, hey, what if everyone today stuck metal into their charging port? Wouldn't that be the coolest trend of all time? Kids are stupid. Don't you remember when we used to choke each other out? Like you would hyperventilate and then you have your friend literally choke you and you pass out. Like, what? Why? There was no TikTok then. It was just stupidity and it spreads like wildfire when your prefrontal cortex isn't developed yet. It's so dumb. And I even saw a couple of news articles that were talking about like, I mean, it's good they're not doing it with their phones because their phones could blow up. And I'm like, don't give them ideas. Like, what are you doing? And like I had actually some schools had to delay their testing because so many kids had managed to damage and destroy their Chromebooks that they didn't have enough Chromebooks to go around so that kids could not do their standardized testing. And like had that been a coordinated effort to somehow not have the standardized testing, I could almost get behind it. We probably shouldn't do arson in our, statements, but that's not what it is. They just want to see if they can get out of doing class for a little bit. And it only takes one. It takes one kid who is like, maybe we should just do fire today and stick metal into outlets. Like, at what point did we all decide that that was a good idea? Because people keep on being like, and some people were like, it was my kid. They were like, my child. I got a call from my kid's school that they stuck a paperclip in the charging port of their Chromebook. So now I get to go to the school, and I'm like, you should tell your kid to stop doing arson. That's not good. The arson is not good. But I don't know if they're actually charging these kids or how they're going to do it other than to charge them for a new Chromebook. Because obviously, when you intentionally destroy school property like that, I would assume they're going to be like, yeah, that's going to be $200, my guy. So we'll see how all that works out. Hopefully that's something that dies over the summer because right now as I'm recording this, it's like last month of school. So it makes sense. Like if there was going to be a time for arson, it does make sense that it's the last month of the school year, at least here in the States. But I'm hoping that over the summer, kids will like forget about it a little bit and move on and maybe go back to like the cakes. You guys remember the sorry for yapping cakes? Like that was a good trend. And that actually did feel like a trend because that was kids posting about bringing cakes to their teachers that said, sorry for yapping. So maybe that will come back or some other food-based treat delivery that apologizes to teachers. That would be a lovely trend to see reemerge. But I absolutely am really excited about one of the resources, another free resource I found for you guys, and I cannot wait to share it with you. And we will get to it right after this break. Welcome back, teacher besties. All right. So, like I told you guys, I'm really trying to find resources that are free and really fun and save you time and resources that are going to bring students in. And so, one of the resources I found is from National Geographic, and they do digital field trips and their live streams. So, I'm just going to read to you some of the things that they're doing. So, there's a girl named Caitlin Bowman. Oh, I don't want to mess up her last name. Adamczyk, I think. And so, for example, she has one on May 22nd, which obviously by the time this comes out, this will have already happened, but this will give you an idea. On May 22nd at 10 a.m. Eastern time, so perfect, right? During the school day, she is going to be talking about her recent expedition to Santorini, Greece, an active volcano in the Mediterranean Sea, and how she hopes to better understand how to predict explosive volcanic eruptions in the future. So I love this because it takes something like, okay, guys, we're going to learn about volcanoes, and it shows how that turns into a job, right? That this girl actually was in Santorini, Greece, and she was doing all of this different stuff to look at the way that this volcano was erupting so that they could look at it in the future. And they have a bunch of those different events with her. And they have different ocean ones and science ones. And I love the idea that you could have an event that is going to be a live streamed event with somebody who's in this field already and is like exploring. And it's also not just a digital thing. It's also not pre-recorded because I think what we see a lot of times is like for something like this, you might show a YouTube video, which isn't necessarily wrong, right? Like you could find a way to make that really fun. But the idea that you could watch a live stream with a scientist and she's exploring and she's talking about all of the different things that she's doing, and you can pair that with your existing unit on volcanoes. Like, how fun is that? Because kids love volcanoes. It does not matter what age it is. Like, everyone has that memory of the science fair where you would do like what is it? The vinegar and soda? Baking soda? Yeah, baking soda volcanic eruption, right? Like that is like a canon event in early like 3rd or 4th grade science. We even had that at my son. My son had his birthday at the Children's Museum in Terre Haute, and part of the birthday party was they did a volcano display. And so they brought out like the whole like baking soda and vinegar and did a volcano eruption for the birthday party and stuff like that. So to take that and to bridge it with what it could look like if you're going to be an adult in that world, I think is really, really exciting. They also have different educational resources that are pre-recorded. So they have live ones and then they have ones that are pre-recorded. So you could pair it with something that maybe is a little bit more like on, what's the word? My brain just like literally shut down. It's summer for me. So, whew. Um, it could pair with wherever your pacing guide is, right? So because it is live, you're not necessarily going to have the volcano unit happen when she's doing the live volcano stuff. So maybe instead you want to just do a search and see, okay, what has been pre-recorded. And they have different resources that are associated with that. So they have articles and they have maps and they have videos and they have all of that stuff. And it's from Nat Geo, right? So you know that the quality is going to be really incredible. And it's just, I get really excited when you can see different ways that people that are already in these fields are trying to reach out to the next generation and bridge that gap. One of the biggest challenges for math and science teachers, especially math teachers, a lot of times is explaining how this math is going to translate into the real world. With English, I feel like we have a little bit easier of a get because you do have to read a lot of stuff as an adult. But you can kind of bridge a lot easier if you can point to it and you can say, hey, look at this person who's doing such a, like that woman was working in Santorini, Greece, working with volcanoes. Like, that is how she's using that math and science. So you can point so directly and say like, hey, that is the project. And then you could even pair it with project-based learning where you could have them look at some of the data and take that data and use the equations that you're learning and wrap that all together using something that shows like, hey, this is how people are using it in the real world. And I love that kind of stuff that makes it feel more present and more real. And a lot of times, like with my students who are getting ready to go through the licensure process, a lot of times the requirements for their final project, which I hate their final project so much, but for their final project, they have to explain how all of these things that they're learning are relating for those kids into the real world. And that has to be part of their instructions and part of their lesson plan is, okay, here's what we're learning. Here's how it relates to the real world. And so this could be a part of that, of bridging that gap between here's the theoretical learning and here's real life. Also, when I was on the website, I saw that they're coming out with a National Geographic Museum of Exploration, which is opening in 2026, which I am delighted by. I did not used to like museums just in general. Like maybe it's my ADHD, maybe it's whatever, but a lot of times I can do about 2 hours at a museum and then I'm like, all right, let's put a button on this thing and wrap it up. But going to seeing how museums have changed and become more interactive, it actually does make me really excited to go to some of these museums. And Nat Geo does things really, really well and does it in really immersive ways. So I am really excited about that one. It's going to be opening up in the heart of Washington, D.C. And there's a bajillion museums in D.C. So when you're there, it's hard to like say like, oh, I'm definitely going to go to that one. Because then you get there and you're like, well, I got to go to the Smithsonian's and I got to go to fill in the blank other ones. So when you go to DC, if you're going in 2026 or you live in that area, just add that to the list of one of the ones that you definitely want to visit because it sounds super fun. And Museum of Exploration, like, come on, that sounds incredible. So just a couple of things for you to look at. And just on the Nat Geo website in general, they have a whole Learn With Us section. They have a professional connection and learning one for teachers, an experiential learning one where kids can do virtual field trips. And I love a virtual field trip. Obviously, you need your kids to not electrocute themselves by sticking paper clips into their charging ports and starting fires in order to do those. But if your kids haven't discovered that fun little trend, maybe a fun little virtual field trip while you guys are studying an area of the world could be something you guys could do. Because I love a free resource, and I love when we can kind of immerse our students in really exciting ways into the world around them and the world beyond their door. Because I know, especially when I taught the super rural school, I had a lot of students who had never been outside of Virginia, much less outside of the country. So it's always good when we can kind of give them a peek of what's out there in the world around them. This has been so fun. Thank you guys for hanging out with me and letting me share with you about my scootering adventure and all of the cool things that are out there for you. Outside of the classroom and in the classroom. If you have thoughts about what we talked about today, or you have resources that you want to share with the rest of the class, you can hit us up, Andrea at human-content.com, or at Educator Andrea on TikTok and Facebook, or you can contact the whole Human Content Podcast family at Human Content Pods. And if you wanted to be hanging out and reading a book with us, I would love that. That would be amazing. And you could join the lives where we share the tea. All the tea. All the spicy tea is always shared on our lives and on our Patreon only episodes. And we read a book, but the book is really like the vehicle for our hangout. You know how it is when you're hanging out with your friends. So you should join. It's patreon.com/those who can read. And thank you guys so much for leaving reviews of the new version of the podcast. It means the absolute world to me. Specifically, thank you to Lizzie787, who said, "We survive with laughter. I enjoy the new name and format. Teaching is joy and also hard." It really is. Having a space for laughter and resources is phenomenal. Thank you so much, Lizzie. That means the absolute world to me. And if you want to leave a review, please do. It makes my heart so happy and means the world to me. If you want to catch those full video episodes, they're up every week on YouTube at Educator Andrea. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host, Andrea Forcum. Our executive producers are Andrea Forcum, Aaron Corney, Rob Goldman, and Shanti Brooke. Our editor is Andrew Sims. Our engineer is Jason Portizo. Our music is by Omer Benzvi. Our recording location is the Indiana State by College of Education. To learn more about our How to Survive the Classroom's program disclaimer and ethics policy and submission, verification, and licensing terms, you can go to podcasterandrea.com. How to Survive the Classroom is a Human Content production.
How to survive the classroom.
Thank you so much for watching. Want more of How to Survive the Classroom? You can watch more episodes right now. Just click on that little box over there. You see it? And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. Okay, bye.